This is All Out Politics, news, debate and opinion from the heart of Westminster. The UK economy has grown by 0.3% in the second 3 months of this year. That is a slight increase that could back up those Brexiteers who say there's too much doom and gloom about economic forecasting. But it's still been seen as a sluggish start. And those who supported Remain will point to the International Monetary Fund's downgrade of the UK's economic performance earlier this month. So are we facing an economic slowdown as we head towards Brexit? Joining me to discuss that are the economic advisor at Arbuthnot Banking Group and co-founder of Global Vision, Ruth Lea, and the economist, she's an economist, another economist, and former government advisor, Vicky Pryce, who back Remain. Welcome to you both. So, Ruth Lea, is the economy slowing down and is it Brexit's fault?
Well, it has slowed down, and it's partly related to the Brexit referendum, and I speak as a Brexiteer who will get shot for saying that. But, well, of course, after the Brexit referendum, the pound did fall quite considerably, and it reached its nadir in about October. That did mean that prices obviously picked up quite a bit, which cut into real earnings. But I would expect and that had a knock-on effect, of course, on the real economy. But I would expect towards the end of this year, you're going to find that that effect of the lower pound is going to drop out of the inflation calculations. Real earnings will improve, and then you should get some pickup in growth.
So does that mean that from an economic perspective, a jobs and growth, wealth perspective, if you like, Brexit was a mistake or is a mistake? Well,
I don't think so personally, but I would say that, wouldn't I? Because obviously
you're entitled to change your mind if you want.
Obviously the falling pound has had an impact in the short run on consumption, but I would expect it to have some sort of offsetting impact on exports. And given the fact that our major markets are growing reasonably well, I would expect exports to pick up as well. So it's on the one hand this and on the one hand that. But I don't actually think that growth would be that much different if there hadn't been a referendum.
Vicky Pryce, what do you think?
Well, I don't agree with that at all, of course. I think we were already on a path of quite high growth last year, which happened even despite the referendum result. But what we've seen right now is that there is so much uncertainty in terms of where we're going to end up with the trade negotiations, the transition period and so on, that you see already what is going on in relation to manufacturing and industrial production and construction. It is extraordinary that despite the fall in the pound, what we got in the last quarter is that, in fact, manufacturing shrunk, I think, by 0.5%. Industrial production
I mean,
fell.
some manufacturers are saying order books are full because it's cheap to buy in Britain.
Well, it's extraordinary. Nevertheless, it doesn't seem to be reflected in the official figures. Although exports have been doing reasonably well. I mean, what we've already seen, of course, is that companies have taken, actually increased their sterling price so that they could improve their own profitability. Good news, because they've been able to hire more people. But in reality, what Brexit has brought with it is this enormous uncertainty in terms of business investment, where people will go in the future. Are we going to have enough people coming into the country to fill the jobs that we really want? Is there going to be a skills shortage? And I think everyone is looking to the politicians to see whether there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And businesses finally are beginning to be heard. And I think we've seen a shift both in government, in terms of Philip Hammond and others now talking about avoiding a cliff edge. And if that cliff edge were to come, then I would expect actually the economy to slow down even more. And in fact, I disagree entirely with Ruth. I think actually 2018, unless there is a clear sign that things are going to be very soft, we're going to see a much more obvious slowdown in the economy than we've seen so far.
Do you think the problem is not so much the fact of Brexit, but the way it has been handled by the politicians?
I think it's an element, but of course I disagree with Vicky. I think she's been far too negative about the economic prospects. And it's interesting, only yesterday BMW said they were going to assemble.
No, but we have
so let's get things in perspective. And investment actually has held up reasonably well. The last quarter, quarter one figures were okay. But I mean,
you both used the word uncertainty, and is that the politicians' fault in a sense?
Well, uncertainty is always with us, but I think the general election result clearly didn't help, if I may say so. But I actually think now that the Cabinet is getting its act together, we've heard all these squabbles about hard Brexit, soft Brexit, falling off a cliff, etc., etc. I now actually think that the Philip Hammond, obviously the Chancellor of the Exchequer, I think his idea of having a proper transitional arrangement between leaving, which will be in March 2019, and when the new treaty actually comes into effect, I think that has now been broadly accepted.
And a transition well, it's been broadly accepted by us. I haven't heard the Europeans talking about it a lot.
Oh, they were talking about it back in April. If you look at the European Parliament, they were talking about a transitional period, max 3 years.
And let's be clear, a transition period would be one where freedom of movement would carry on, and so would both goods and people.
Who knows? I mean, that is all up for negotiation. Personally, I don't mind what that transitional arrangement looks like. Technically, we would be out of the single market, we would be out of the customs union, but what else is actually negotiated is up for negotiation.
Do you think the government's getting its act together?
No, I don't really think so. I mean, there's been some signs. We hear still contradictory remarks, of course. There have been some signs that the Treasury is getting now stronger again, that Philip Hammond is able to push his thinking through. Of course, remember, Philip Hammond always thought that leaving the single market, as he said so himself, would be pretty bad for the UK economy. And finally, businesses are getting in the act to explain what it is. But Liam Fox, yes, up to a point, Liam Fox is now saying transition period. Others are talking about this too. But I don't think there is any real understanding of what this transition period is likely to have with it, such as ECJ, so the European Court of Justice, is going to be very significant still. And also what you can do in that interim period in terms of having any other arrangements or discussions to have any trade agreements with any other countries. You're not supposed to do that while we're still going through this period. So actually that becomes even longer in terms of getting to any final position.
We don't know that. We don't know that.
Yes,
I mean,
so the
once we
uncertainty is still
leave
there.
out of the customs union, start negotiating trade deals, we'll be out of the single market, start be able to control immigration. What the actual transition, I can only repeat, we do not know what that transitional arrangement will be because it has to be negotiated.
And the transition, of course, is to an end point. From your point of view, does it need to be Britain, at the very least, remaining in the European Economic Area?
Oh, no. I mean, we're out. I think that's unquestionable.
Not true.
It's unquestioning. No, sorry, it's unquestioning. We will not be in the European Economic Area. We will not be in the single market. End of.
And we're not be in the customs union.
We will not. No.
Well, I'm very surprised to say that because
it's true.
No, it's
that's
just not true.
That's why I'm saying it, because it's true.
You don't know what the transition period is going to be, so I
the
don't
transition.
see how you
no,
can
no.
No, but the end point.
Philip Hammond's made it clear.
No, but hang on, wait a minute. Within the terms of leaving the European Union, it is demonstrably possible not to be a member of the European Union and to be in the European Economic Area.
The European Economic Area, in other words, a single market, Norway, Iceland, Liechtenstein, has been ruled out.
By who?
By the government.
Yeah, but they could change their mind. Wasn't in the referendum, was it?
I would take a £10 bet they don't. We will not be in the EEA.
That's a very small bet you're taking.
Well, all right, 100.
100 perhaps. Well, who knows what will be, whether you call it the EEA or anything else. I mean, my view would be that if indeed the government has got its act together and really worries about the economy, we're going to still be in the single market, still be in the customs union during the transitional period.
No, but at the end of it, it's the end point.
You're in denial,
There is no
Vicky.
such thing as an end point, in my
denial.
view. It could be anything. By then, because who knows how long the transition period will last? Who knows what will have been happening to the economy in the meantime? Who knows what will be happening in Europe in the meantime? So any of those possibilities are there for us to choose from.
But as someone who supported the Liberal Democrats, I mean, there's been this change of leader from Fallon to Cable. Do you think that marks an acceptance, if you like, that Brexit is going to happen, that it is not going to be reversed this side of us leaving?
Well, as far as I understand from Vince Cable's pronouncement so far, I mean, he would quite like to see another referendum. So I don't think that there is...
He sort of abandoned that, hasn't he?
Well,
that was Fallon's
he's
policy.
sort of come back and said that really, Brexit may just never happen. So as far as I can see, that there is a huge opportunity for them to be pushing for something that is actually good for the economy, which means basically being as close as we are now to the single market and to the customs union. And that is through some agreement, of course, with the Europeans, but that is what is going to be helping the economy in the future. Otherwise, I think we are going to see the serious slowdown and no investment in this country.
I'm in favour of having a close trade relationship once we've left. I'm not I'm not at the sort of the end of the pier, fall off a cliff.
Not just in favour, you probably think we need it.
I think we need it.
Yeah.
I do. I mean, we could survive under WTO rules, but it would be far from optimal. And that's why I think when Theresa May talks about a close relationship, a trade relationship with the EU, she's right.
But she's not very stable, is she? I mean,
no, but
don't you think there's going to have to be? I mean, to me, the reading on the wall would be, whatever the rights and wrongs of it, there's going to have to be a quote softening in the government's position.
I think it's there. I think if you read Philip Hammond's Mansion House speech, and I do recommend...
Well, Philip Hammond's not Theresa May.
No, he's not, but he looks remarkably like her, if I may say so.
That's not very gallant.
But, no, I know, and as Vicky has said, and I'm trying to be consensual, is that actually that Philip Hammond and the Treasury has actually got back some of its mojo. I don't think there's any doubt about that. It's now much more influential than it was before the election, which is a good thing. And if you read the Mansion House speech, it is quite clear where Philip Hammond is heading, and I think he is now very influential in the government.
Well, I think that certainly is happening. The question is how long that will last. But if you look at some of the data that's coming out, it does suggest that now they are getting a little bit worried about what the economy would do. So if they're looking ahead at whatever election there may be, should there be suddenly another election?
Figures, record levels on employment figures.
The majority of those employment,
none of the positives.
Real term declines in pay.
Yeah.
I mean, you can balance
yeah. Well,
one
as I was
against the other,
saying,
you know.
I think when inflation turns down by the end of the year, the real income earnings growth will come back. And in the meantime, you have one of the most buoyant, robust labour markets. Well, look at the positives as well as the negatives.
I'm looking at the
please.
positives. The really interesting thing is that all the increase in employment we've seen recently has been from migrants from the EU. They have taken the jobs, which is very good news that they come in and help. Well, unemployment's fallen a little bit further. This is absolutely true. Being in the EU has allowed companies to develop their sort of response to increased demand, if you like, in various areas, to meet the demand of Europeans. So what's going on right now is that Europe is growing very fast, and the reason why our exports are doing reasonably well is because they're going to Europe, not to the rest of the world, but to Europe. So this is a supposed failed region that we wanted to leave, actually growing much faster than we are.
1.9% as opposed to 1.7%.
Okay. We're going to have you both back. see whose predictions are right. Thank you very much indeed.